Hey YouTube, Amanda LaPalme here, also known as Dragon Duels Girl, covering this event here at Cool Stuff Games, Pot of Duality Tournament. Alvaro Gonzales versus Leroy battles, and this is going to be a fairy mirror match. So Alvaro opens and reveals the top 3 cards of his deck, and grab Gelen Duo because that is a really good card to have in the mirror match, and the only thing that can really run it over is a Hyperion or Trishula play. Now these guys are dueling for the stakes of a Pot of Duality. The loser here in the semifinals leaves with an ultimate solemn warning, and the winner goes on with a guaranteed Pot of Duality and a chance at getting 2 Pot of Dualities, doubling that amount. So here Alvaro activates Dimensional Alchemist, removing from play Monster Born from the top of his deck, and he sets 2 back rows and passes. As Leroy goes, summons Venus, and it gets Solemn Warning. Alvaro activates Venus, grabbing a Mystical Shine Ball, and that's when Leroy chains Torrential Tribute, and of course the judge goes, I'm gonna let you finish, but there's this great mechanic in Yu-Gi-Oh! Called Priority, and your opponent still has it. Alvaro passes Priority though, even though the judge, of course, insinuated that you definitely can activate Venus before your opponent responds. Had no response. So remember to ask your opponent if they activate anything with Priority before you chain, because if he chained Torrential, Alvaro could have simply said, well, I'm activating my Venus as Chain Link 1 and bringing out a Shine Ball. On Alvaro's end phase, Leroy activates Call of the Haunted, and Alvaro 7 tools it. Passing on to Leroy. Leroy summons Dimensional Alchemist and mills absolutely anything with it. He mills Celestial Transformation, which some of the background players were making commentaries on that. I suppose it's a personal preference tech choice, but again, those Dimensional Alchemists are just swinging for 18 but not doing much else. Alvaro summons Hyperion, and Leroy goes, remove your monster. I'm going to Warning. Alvaro sets and passes. And Leroy does Tornadoes on end phase. Leroy removes the top card of his deck from play, removing from play a Dimensional Prison for his Dimensional Alchemist. Leroy swings, hits the Gelen Duo, and sets and passes. Alvaro passes. Leroy goes, removes the top card of his deck from play. Oh, look, he removes a D-Alch. That's great. Anyways, he summons Birdman, syncers into Trish, and that's when Alvaro stops it with a Herald of Orange Light, using up the last 2 cards in his hand. Leroy activates Monster Born for game, targeting Master Hyperion. And we move on to game 2. Alvaro opens, grabbing a Venus with Pot of Duality. Alvaro summons Thunder King Ryo, sets 2 and passes. On an end phase, Alvaro blind MSTs a Solemn Judgment. Alvaro attempts to Pot of Duality while T-King's on the field, and the judge is like, so he ends up summoning Venus, paying 500 for Shine Ball, and paying another 500 for Shine Ball. Now T-King shuts down a lot of things in this deck. It shuts down the Agents, shuts down Hyperion, and it's bigger than anything you can basically hard summon in that deck, aside from Jupiter, and you need the proper graveyard setup for Jupiter, so it does do a lot of damage to that deck. And Alvaro swings directly for 16 after T-King runs over a face-down Shine Ball. Leroy draws, sets, and passes. Alvaro sets, swings with T-King again, and never set and then swing, unless you want to run a Demolition Catastrophe. He swings for 1600 and passes, and of course, we have this thing called main phase 2, and it's a nice thing to utilize in this game because you never know what your opponent might have back row, and it's good to set your investments after you figure out what's really going on in the field. Leroy Dark Holes, clearing the field. Gets rid of that pesky T-King. And he does Tornado's random back row, hitting the Warning. Alvaro finally activates that Dead Duality. and reveals the top 3 cards. He grabs Jupiter and puts back that Torrential and Dialk. He sets, summons Jupiter. Again, wrong order, but gets that swing out. And then passes on to Leroy. Leroy sets and passes. Alvaro removes for Hyperion, and Leroy chains the selection. And Alvaro chains 7 tools. Going on to game 3. Leroy opens with a Earth, of course, standard opening, grabs Venus. And this is very commonly seen in fairy decks. Another reason why T-King is so good, is it makes that card extremely dead. And he passes. Alvaro goes. MST random back row, hitting an MST. Sets 3, summons Dialk, and then swings into a Mirror Force. Leroy goes, summoning Venus, and Alvaro chains Torrential on the summon of the first Shine Ball. Leroy sets 1 and passes. Alvaro Dualities, and reveals not very useful cards in this situation. And he grabs the MST, which is really the only active thing out of those other 2 cards. And he hits a Book of Moon with it. Leroy summons a Jupiter, and at 8,000 Alvaro Solemn Warnings it, which I don't know why, because honestly that's just feeding the graveyard for a Hyperion, which we're actually ironically going to see right now. He had plenty of life points to spare to take the hit from that, but instead Leroy summons the Hyperion, removes to pop the back row, which was a 7 tools, and swings directly for 27. But we'll see why Alvaro warning that Jupiter in a second, because he absolutely had nothing in his hand to get rid of that Jupiter anytime soon, and concedes defeat when he reveals those 2 Hyperion. And that is game 3. Leroy is going to move on to the finals with a chance at getting an extra duality, and Alvaro leaves the duel with a Solemn Warning ultimate.